I'm going to sound like a broken record because I am going to once again talk about the rise of the alt left. And I know those words might be triggering for some people, but if you haven't turned off the video by now, please listen to me and then make your decision on whether I am the next alt right Alex Jones or whatever you want to call me. Right. So, again, with these politics news, I know it triggers some people, but I always try to be as objective as possible and as centrist as possible. In fact, in my Twitter bio, I say that I am a centrist. Maybe people would disagree with me on that, but this is just how I view things, right? And I welcome a debate because I know you guys are, you know, more left leaning than me, probably at this point, right? Like center left. But I think you guys are reasonable people, right? And I'm talking about Dom and Tristan, right? I don't know about our audience members. Hopefully, our audience members are reasonable people too. I'm sure they are. So, yeah, anyways, let's talk about the stories, right? The first story that I want to talk about is a communist march in Philadelphia. And I'm not saying communists as like a diss this time. I mean that that's literally what they call themselves. They're actually, literally the communists, right? So they call themselves the Revolutionary Communists of America. And then they went on this march waving like, communist flags and stuff like that, red, kind of Soviet Union inspired flags, I guess you can say. Yeah, like this is just I tweeted about what my thoughts about this when I first saw this video, right? So I'm gonna read my tweet, and you guys tell me if I'm being unreasonable or do you guys think I'm, actually have a point there, right? So what I said was after watching this video, is if you just briefly look at this crowd, they appear to primarily be white upper middle class people whom I would imagine has never experienced real communism. I bring up the fact that they're white, not to make it a thing about race, but to underscore the point that I come from a family of immigrants from China. If you ask any Chinese person what their experience was in Mao's Cultural Revolution and the Great Leap Forward, I don't think these people will be cheering for communism after that. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Here in the West, we have had the luxury of never having experienced real communism, and let's keep it that way. So that's kind of what my thoughts are. But yeah, and I think that just one final point before I pass it to you guys. If there was like, there's extremists on both sides, obviously, right? I'm not like trying to say that these people represent the entire left. So don't get me wrong, okay? I understand that there's extremists from both sides, but let's just say that there was an alt-right rally, right? So like a neo-Nazi rally or whatever, right? Like a legit fascist rally, then it would be all over the news, right? But you guys probably didn't hear about this story until I just presented to you now. When you got to wonder, why is that the case, right? Like I think the media has a left-leaning bias, and when there's left-leaning extremists, these stories often go unreported. And there were like, this wasn't like a small number of people, right? Like if you watch like the video, there's like a couple hundred at least people in this march. So there are extremists on both sides. And again, I'm not saying that this represents the entire left, but I think we should point out like these alt left extremists when like stuff like this happens, right? Again, if there was a neo-Nazi march, like we would all universally condemn it, and we should. However, when there's an alt left communist march, when it's like, in my opinion, promoting a lot of murderous and violent ideology, if you just look at any like communist countries around the world, I think that like the media kind of just sweeps it under the rug. And I only saw this because of X, and in my opinion, is because Elon bought X, or it was called Twitter back then, and now it's called X. But it's because Elon bought it, and he, at least I think he's trying to make an effort to make it fair to both sides. So that's why I saw this on X when this was not reported in the media at all, in the mainstream media. So just to get what you guys think about this, like, do you guys think that, you know, America has a problem with alt left extremists? Do you think that this is overblown? Do you think that this is just like, this is like an okay thing to do, or, okay thing to march in a communist kind of, parade? Or like, just what are your thoughts around this in general?
I don't think they're gonna get anywhere. Like I think it's very clear to me that communism is very niche. Most people are not sitting there going, "Woohoo, let's go be communists." So this is going to be a small subsection of the population, no matter what. I don't think they're going to get anything done. There's been a Communist Party of Canada. There's a Communist Party in the States. Like, there's like 10 people in them. And yes, I know that there was like 200 people at this march kind of thing, or maybe more, but in the grand scheme of like the population of the US, that's not actually that many. I don't think most people are subscribed to this level of thinking. So I think it's basically kind of I think it's, I don't know if I would necessarily view it as this as a sign of the rise of the alt left per se, any more so than back when there were some alt right rallies with like regards to I forget the one place where there was the protesters and counter protesters, and I feel like there was a church in the name, but I remember there was a big kerfuffle over there. I think it's clear that there is a very small subset of the population who is interested in the alts of these scenarios, whether it's the alt left or the alt right. I think that the alt left tends to be more socially acceptable, if only because I believe we have more left-leaning governments in power currently. I think that I also think that the alt-right has more negative perception at a glance, because when you think about the symbols of these different sides, the hammer and sickle for like communism, most people don't associate that with the genocide, even though obviously millions of people died as a result of this under communism, for communism, whatever. Whereas the kind of the quintessential symbol of the alt-right is the Nazi flag, and their main factor that people remember them for is the Holocaust, which was obviously peak. Things are terrible. Millions of people are dying. Genocide. It's clearly, I think most people clearly understand the negative side of the alt-right, whereas I think there's a much more of misunderstanding, as well as people just don't associate the hammer and sickle, for example, as a symbol of the millions of people who died in like China, for instance, during the Mao industrial, I forget what it's called, the thing Mao did. You mentioned
cultural revolution.
A cultural revolution. That's
great leap forward. Yeah.
The great leap forward. Yes. So I just don't think that people associate them. So I think it's, in some regards, it's kind of a marketing issue. The Nazis have worse marketing, and I'm not saying that they should have better marketing. To clarify, I think that both sides obviously are kind of nuts. I think it's just very clear to me that it's very clear, I think, to me and for most people, that the Nazis are bad. And if you have the Nazi flag on your side, you're probably not on the right side of history. But it's not as apparent with a communist hammer and sickle kind of Soviet flag.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with what you just said, right? I think you pointed out like a very like a big problem in society these days in the West that we need to correct, which is these two ideologies, fascism versus communism. They're both extremes, but on opposite ends. But we treat them differently. Where you said, you know, communist ideology, alt left ideology in general is more widely accepted when in my opinion it shouldn't be, right? Like it why like they're both ideologies that have led to genocide and led to a lot of death in the world and destruction, where it's one side where it's like if somebody waves like a Nazi flag or if it's somebody's an outright self-proclaimed fascist, we all universally agree that that person is probably a bad person, right? Or at least their ideology that they're promoting is a bad like ideology. But if somebody waves like a communist flag around, then all of a sudden there's like a big debate, right? And yeah, again, what you said about like Mao's Great Leap Forward and all this stuff, um, I totally agree, right? Like it's like um, the West has not experienced something like that. So what I mentioned about, you know, if you just look at the people that are in this parade, they're all wearing like modern clothes that are built like you know in by capitalism, right? And they're probably using like they probably all have a phone, they probably all use computers, they probably use like you know the banking system and you know uh, financial services, right? All a lot of this is the fruits of capitalism, and yet like they're enjoying the fruits of capitalism while they're promoting a communist ideology which threatens to take away all of that from everybody, right? And it's like you know and yeah, I just think that like it's somehow the upper middle class of people that is like the most subscribed to these alt left ideologies, which I think is kind of really sad because if we actually did go to like a communist government, those are the people that are going to be persecuted first, quite frankly, right? Because like they have no like these people have probably never worked like actual jobs where they need to like actually maybe this is my personal bias, but like you know, it's just these people have probably never worked actual jobs that have never worked like you know super hard and like have all these like skills to know how to build a business and how to like run a business and operate like big business operations, and then you have these people that have like no contributions to society that's like promoting this communist ideology that threatens to take away the fruits of labors of others, right? Like I know that was just a politically charged statement, but this is just my opinion, and you can feel free to disagree with it. But yeah, Tristan, you wanted to add something?
Yeah, sorry, just before we let Dom speak, I actually have a theory on why it tends to be the middle class that has some of the more so the propensity to lean into this ideology. And I think it's mostly because they're the ones who tend to have enough money to, you know, feel like they should be able to do stuff, but because of the failings of our society and our governments, etc., they can't afford to do anything. So, for example, like they can't afford to buy houses, they can't afford to buy um, cars or whatever. They're in debt. All this stuff where it's like they feel like they should be doing better, and so they jump over to looking at um, an alternative perspective. So they hard correct is kind of what I'm thinking instead of like how solving it at the cause. I think that they hard correct over
Yeah,
onto
so
it.
like I'm not saying that their problems are not valid, right? I understand that there's a tough economic time going around for a lot of people. Like heck, I just got fired from my job, right? So like I understand that this is this like the economy is a big issue top of that's top of mind for a lot of people. However, yeah, like you said, I don't think this warrants going extreme either way, right? So there's two solutions that you can do when there's like, when you feel like life is not going your way. You can choose to kind of like analyze the problem deeply and find out why exactly, or you just like do like dispense with all the thinking and then pick an enemy, preferably an abstract enemy, like something like capitalism is the result of like, my troubles, and then you just blame capitalism, right? Everything is capital. I lost my job. That's because capitalism, right? Or it's not because of like, inflation. It's because of capitalism. It's not because of the money printing, right? And it's just, I think it's just a very childish way to look at the world, and it comes from a kind of lack of understanding of how the world works. And we've seen a lot of bad consequences that we can talk about later of communism. But let me just give Dom a chance to speak, because I know we kind of skipped over Dom. So yeah, what are your opinions before we move on to the next part?
I'd say like for the sake of time, I think I can like pause. But like, okay, since I'm already here, like all in all, I think yeah, both sides should be equally advertised like via like news networks, and it's like kind of not cool how like one side alt left isn't advertised as much as right. I think if you dig deep, they're both equally as wrong. So I think they should both get equal exposure to the news, and I guess society is just portrayed this way, but it is what it is. Hopefully, it can change. So just for the sake of time, like I'm okay to end
Yeah,
here.
like, and that's the thing, right? Like, you never even hear the word alt left in the media, and I think these days it's the media is so biased that they don't even acknowledge that the alt left exists. Like, think about how many times you've heard the word alt right just browsing through like online media, or like watching like channel news and TV and stuff. I don't know if you guys still watch TV, but like, they this alt right this, alt right that, and then they never mention alt left, because apparently the alt left doesn't exist.